right? Similar to a 4-note away major third. But I also note that I'm not usually going to go forward 3. I could make the inverse, which we'll talk more about, or the mirror inverse, or the negative directional term, which would be 12 minus 4, negative 8 from the Lydian mode, 7 minus 2, negative 5, negative 5th modal half step, which you would think would be the negative 6th scale degree, but we don't have scale degrees, going backwards. Problem. Okay. Let's do the next one. So now we've got a 9-note away major 6. So a major 6 is going to be in, so here's our C down here. Let's go 9 up from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Lands me on a continent. Great. So what's the inverse? 12 minus 9, which would be a 3-note away minor third. So the inverse of a major is a minor. The third means I'm going to go up 3. But really, I'm going backwards, right? So I'd like to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 backwards. So a minor third then, I'm sorry, I might have said major. A minor third could be forward 3 notes, but it could also be backwards 9 notes. And notice that that 3 doesn't really help you determine negative directionality, right? It doesn't really tell you how many continents back I'm going. Because again, you can't really take 7 minus 3 to get the negative distance because the 3 is off by 1. It's really 2 modal half steps. It's really 2 modal half steps, and therefore it would be 7 minus 2, right, to go the other way. So this one is in the Ionian, so I could say that it's going to be it's going to be an IA or an Ionian to the Aeolian modal range, which would be our 9-note away Ionian 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. The inverse would be an AI modal range. Oh no, we're getting into AI again. We're getting into AI. It's going to be an AI modal range. Here it is. And so an AI modal range is a 6-1 modal range, which would be a 3-note away from the Aeolian node and a 2nd modal half step, which would be the 3-note away minor third, right? But I can also do the reverse because I could say, okay, well, really I'm going backwards, so it should be a negative 12 minus 3 or 9-note away from the Aeolian node, negative 7 minus 2, negative 5th modal half step. See, we can introduce that term, which makes sense. We can't do it with the scale degrees because the scale degrees are off by 1. I can't get a negative scale degree, so all I can do is kind of memorize that the minor third could be going forward 3 clockwise or counterclockwise 9. You just memorize that. Some people, I've heard them use negative scale degrees, but most people don't, and even if you do, it doesn't really make sense like the way you would think it would mathematically, because again, they counted it off by 1. So then let's do the next one. We have a 10-note away minor 7. So a 10-note away minor 7 is not going to be from the sea. I'll land in the ocean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lands in the ocean. But I could go from the A. Let's go from this Aeolian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That will land us over here on the G. What's the inverse? It's 12 minus 10, which would be 2, which we just have to know is a 2-note away minor 2nd. But again, that would mean that you're going forward 2 back to the A, and I'm really thinking that I'm going backwards 2, so therefore I would think of, I'm sorry, it's a major 2nd, not a minor 2nd. The inverse of a minor is a major. So I would be going backwards. So the major 2nd you would think could either be forward 2 or backwards 10. So that's how I would think about it. I would say it's a negative 10 minor 2nd, right? If you're going backwards. We'll talk more about that later, but you have to just kind of understand that most people are going to say, if I went from here back to here, they're going to call that, I'm sorry, major 2nd. They're going to call that a major 2nd, even though you're going backwards. And then again, they'll just drop the idea of directionality altogether, which is not helpful, right? Let's go to the if I'm on the Aeolian, we're going to say it's on the Aeolian, and we're going to go from here to here. So it's going to be an AX modal range, a 6-5 modal range, which is a 10 note away from the Aeolian node 6 modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. So what would be the inverse of that? It would be an XA, it would be an XA modal range. So if I go from the X, I'm going to an XA modal range, which would be here. And that's going to be, what's the distance to go from X to A? Well, normally I would go clockwise or to the right, which would be a 2 note away from the Mixolydian node 1st modal half step, which would be the 2nd scale degree. But I can also easily do the inverse here. I can easily go backwards, go counterclockwise by taking 12 minus 2 would be negative 10 from the Mixolydian node, and 7 minus 1 would be negative 6. So I can see that I can see directionality would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps back, which would be the negative 7th scale degree. I can't do that here because I can say directionality is going backwards if I include the notes, but I can't really say that a 2nd scale degree forward is going to be 2 minus 7 to go backwards, because again it's off and we don't use the scale degrees going backwards. So the whole scale degree measuring tool only works going clockwise basically, but you can kind of work around it by just memorizing the negative distance of a major second. You just have to know that it would be negative 10 backwards. Right? A major second going forward is negative 10 backwards. But if you did it this way, you can derive it easy just using simple directionality math. This is why I think there's a conspiracy that music used to be really kind of logical. Logic was the thing that made people attracted to it. But then they somehow just to hide the fact that the naming convention is all wacky, convince people that counting is bad or something. I don't know. I'm coming up with a theory here. Anyway, and then we have an 11 note away major 7. So if you're starting on the C and we go 11 away, let's do it from here. Oh, now I lost my mouse again. All right, so we're on this one. So I'm going to say if we're on this C and we go up 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, we get to here, which is going to be 7 scale degree, which would be 6 modal half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 scale degrees if I make that the 1. Okay, what's the inverse? Well, if I know it's 11 notes away, the inverse is going to be 12 minus 11, which is 1, which I know is going to be a minor something, because the inverse of a major is a minor. It's a minor, and we call it a minor second, right? A minor second. You just kind of have to know that. We can see that is in the Ionian node, so I could call it, that's an IN modal range. I would call it an IN modal range, which has a distance of an 11 note away Ionian 6 modal half step, which would be the 7th scale degree. What would be the inverse distance? Well, I would be going from the N back to the I, which would be an NI modal range, whereas the Locrian is way over here, of course. Had to end it off on one way over here. It would be an NI modal range, which would be a 7-1 modal range. So I can get back there by just completing the lap around the block. So why go backwards? I could just go 1 note forward from the Locrian node, which would be 1 modal half step forward, right? I could just finish it going this way, but I'm run out of fretboard. I need to go back the other way. Okay? Well, then I could make a term for that, which would be a negative 12 minus 1, which would be negative 11 from the Locrian node, and 7 minus 1 would be negative 6 modal half steps backwards, which would be the negative 7th scale degree backwards if we used negative scale degrees, but we don't. Most people don't, and that's why it's a problem. So there it is. So again, bottom line, from a practical standpoint, I would start to learn these intervals both with directionality. They have a forward clockwise directionality and a reverse directionality. If I can go forwards to this C, or I can go backwards to this C from here, and I can name that with the same interval. A lot of people don't see it that way. right? But I think that's the clearest way to add directionality into your fretboard thinking, and also just add, so you add the note name, right? I'm going forward this many notes and the interval, or I'm going backwards this many notes. That also will help you out with octaves, to clarify something that's within an octave to something that's greater than an octave in distance, so that you can count it out.